Good afternoon, everybody. I can see that our attendees are joining us now. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. It's really great to see all of you on the webinar. For those of you who I haven't yet met, my name is Robin Vernon Harcourt. I'm a Senior Programme Manager at the Lord Mayor's Appeal, and I lead on our mental health and our This Is Me programme. Before we start, and as our last few attendees are joining us, I'm going to run through some housekeeping points. So you will have noticed that when you've joined us, when you've joined the meeting, both your video and your microphone are off. That will remain the same for the duration of the webinar, but there is the chat function at the bottom of your screen that you can use to let us know if you're having any difficulties or if you need any help. The webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to share that with anybody who hasn't been able to join us live today. And we also have, for this session, at the bottom of our screen, a Q&A function. So as we go through the webinar, if you have any questions for us or any questions for our speaker, do use the Q&A function to share those questions with us. You'll also notice there's the option to like other people's questions by clicking on the thumbs up icon. So if you see a question that you like and you want to hear the answer to, do like it, and that means it will rise in the list of questions and we'll most likely be able to get to those questions first. So now I think that we have the majority of people with us this morning. We will get started. So the purpose of this webinar, this is our third webinar in our This Is Me series for 2020. And the purpose of today is really to share best practice and practical advice on how to create a This Is Me film for your organisation. This builds on the webinar that we had last month that I know some of you also attended on how to encourage your employees to share their stories. So this is the next step in terms of how you can actually create that storytelling campaign and use the This Is Me film model to do that. I'm really delighted today to have two of our business speakers with us. We have Vanessa Whitman from CMS and Ian Sadler from AQA. They are going to be sharing their experiences of how they went about creating their organisational This Is Me film, sharing the steps that they took and their top tips for you today as well. So by the end of today's session, you should go home with some really practical steps that you can take when creating your own This Is Me film. Before I hand over to our speakers, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to what This Is Me is for those of you who might be newer to the campaign and to the programme, and just touch really quickly on why we focus on storytelling and why we really recommend that this is something that you get involved with. So in a nutshell, This Is Me supports organisations to end the stigma around mental health in the workplace, creating healthier and more inclusive cultures to improve employee well-being. And we support organisations to do this with a number of tools that you can see on our screen. So the first of these is to support organisations to raise awareness of the importance of supporting mental health. And we do that through our Green Ribbon campaign that runs during Mental Health Awareness Week and World Mental Health Day. Secondly, by supporting organisations to encourage their employees to share their lived experience of mental health, and that's through our This Is Me storytelling, which we're focusing on today. And thirdly, to support organisations to build the skills and confidence of their employees to have conversations around mental health and to do that confidently. And that's through our online e-learning tool that we developed in partnership with the Samaritans called Wellbeing in the Workplace. So there are a range of tools for you to use depending on what stage of your journey you're at and depending on your mental health agenda in your workplace. And today we're very much focusing on This Is Me storytelling as one of those tools. And what this really does is provides a model for you to know how to share your employees' stories, and to do so with looking at the whole person, not just their experience of mental ill health or mental health challenges, and it sort of covers a range of steps about how you can approach this, how you can support your employees through that process, and how you can actually put together a film or another storytelling campaign. I won't go into detail about that because that's what our speakers are going to share with you and give you some really practical tips on that. But before we go into that detail, I just wanted to quickly touch on why it is that we look at storytelling at all and why we feel it's so important. And the really simple reason for that is because we know from our research, from working with our businesses over the last 5 years, that storytelling has a really direct impact on raising awareness, on encouraging people to talk more openly, changing attitudes around mental health for the better, and really reducing that stigma. And you can see some of the statistics from last year's annual survey on the screen. But what's also really important about storytelling is, as well as that direct impact, it really has the ability to act as a catalyst for wider culture change across the organisation as a whole. And we measure organisations who do This Is Me against these 10 measures that you can see on the screen. We say that if you're achieving 7 or more of these measures, you're making really great progress, really tangible and sustainable progress around how your organisation is both thinking and acting around mental health. And what we found from our surveys over the year and last year is that for those organisations who hadn't yet done storytelling, only 28% of those were achieving 7 or more of those measures. Then by comparison, when we looked at those organisations who had done This Is Me storytelling and had shared stories, this figure increased that 87% of those organisations were achieving 7 or more measures. So you can really see in that, not just the direct impact it has, but the real opportunity storytelling brings to create that culture that is receptive to mental health within your workplace. And that's why it's such an exciting opportunity and why we are delighted to have you all here today. So I think for lots of you on the call, you've probably seen some examples of This Is Me films, but I think the best way to set this into context and look at what we're aiming towards is to actually share an example with you today. So really delighted to share our Thomson Reuters This Is Me film with you today to get a sort of an example of what we're looking at.
I'm an executive assistant in the Financial and Risk Division of Thomson Reuters.
I work at Thomson Reuters in the credit management team in Canary Wharf in London.
I work in internal communications supporting corporate responsibility and inclusion and UK benefits.
I'm a senior marketing executive in the legal business at Thomson Reuters.
I work for Thomson Reuters Legal. I've worked for the company for nearly 22 years.
I'm a web marketing executive at Thomson Reuters Legal UKI.
I'm a senior director of talent and development focused on early careers in corporate human resources at Thomson Reuters.
I'm a big football fan and I love boxing. I recently took part in a white-collar boxing match last year on my 28th birthday.
I love cooking, I love good wine, and I love music.
I've got 3 wonderful grandchildren. I enjoy football, I enjoy a lot of walking. I've got a marvellous wife and family generally.
I like my exercise, so I cycle, I run, and I do yoga.
I'm a really big lover of the arts outside of work. I love creative things.
I'm a huge geek, so I love Superman and Batman. I love comic books, comic book films.
I love reading books. I love astronomy. I love going out with friends, listening to a lot of music, and I try to do that as much as possible to make sure that I'm making myself happy doing the things that I love.
I was diagnosed with post-viral depression about 30 years ago. That was the toughest time because it was the first time it ever happened to me. Since then I've had a couple of occurrences in the last 2 years, but not that many. But it still knocks you for 6 when it happens.
When I was 14, I was diagnosed with trichotillomania, which is a compulsion to pull your own hair out. Some people say that it's related to obsessive compulsive disorder, some people say self-harm, some say anxiety, some say stress. Whatever the reason, I pulled my own hair out for 23 years.
I first remember suffering from depression from about the age of 12, but not really realising what it was at that stage.
And when I turned 17, I actually contemplated taking my own life. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and after that I sought counselling for the first time, where where I had counselling for 4 or 5 years.
I was in a really foreign and new professional environment. The stress of the jobs, the triggers of trying to prove yourself in a very different way.
It was initially something that I battled myself. I didn't think that I was actually suffering from anything. I didn't really believe that you could have a mental health issue that could be serious.
I was just out and about doing my regular day, going shopping. I was on a bus, and completely out of the blue, I just couldn't breathe. Anxiety completely overwhelmed me. I didn't know what it was at the time.
Walking was one of the things that cleared my head, got me out of the norm, if you like, and allowed me time to think, because you have to focus your mind on certain things, and that allows you to get away from the bad points.
I have seen various psychologists, psychiatrists and counsellors over the years. The psychologists and psychiatrists are interesting because they explain the chemical reasons as to why you suffer from depression.
I would highly recommend anyone who has ever been wronged by someone or felt hard done by or felt they were in the wrong for something, just to learn to overcome and forgive that person, because ultimately you're the only one that's wrestling with that. The person who might have done something wrong to you might not have any idea of what they did to you.
I actually went to HR to check that it was okay to have a shaved head as opposed to wear my wig, because my wig was incredibly uncomfortable, and after 4 months it wasn't looking great either.
After some years of therapy, that really helped me find my purpose and truly believe that I could do anything, find the confidence to really track my life the way I wanted to track it. Now I've been dealing with my depression by myself.
Having a name, having a diagnosis was a real help. It made me understand what was wrong. It gave me something to look at and focus on, and to realise that actually I might have had this for longer than I thought.
So the path forward after realizing that I had a problem and finally learning that I could do something about it was long. I worked through this for many years, personally and professionally, and now many years later, I can talk about it. I can actually go to people and take away the taboo and the shame that I felt in the past and become open and transparent about it, and it doesn't affect me the way that it used to. So I've learned coping mechanisms, and I've learned that I can have this as a part of my life, but equally I have power to do something about it.
I'm Frank, and this is me.
I am Katie, and this is me.
I'm Daniel, and this is me.
My name is Helen, and this is me.
My name is Nikki, and this is me.
My name is Leo Mello, and this is me.
My name is Ilona, and this is me.
Great, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the type of This Is Me film that you can create, and really see how powerful it is when people share their stories, and that power it has on us individually, but also that it has on us as organisations. So before I hand over to our speakers, now that we've seen a film and we've kind of looked at a little bit of the context around it, I would like you all to complete this very short poll. There's just one question, and really it's looking at what is the biggest challenge that you may be facing currently, or difficulty in putting together your This Is Me film? Or now that you've seen an example of it, what might you think that you might find hard when you're doing this in your workplace? We'll give you about 30 seconds to complete that poll, and then we'll have a look at sort of what that spread looks like for people across their different organisations. So any last votes, and then I think we'll close the poll and see where we're at. Wonderful, so you should all see these results on your screen now. So really interesting, it looks like the majority of people are finding, potentially having the difficulty of finding employees to take part, and then looking at supporting employees through the process as well. Of course, with other areas, are quite a spread across there as well. So that's actually a really nice lead in to me introducing our first speaker. So Vanessa is a partner at CMS, and Vanessa and a team of people at the organisation have done fantastic work in creating their This Is Me film, and we'll have some really interesting reflections to share with you, especially along some of those areas about how to encourage people to take part and supporting them through the process. We'll also look at all of those areas that we sort of touched on and bring out some more around those challenges in our Q&A as well. But thank you so much, Vanessa, for being here with us today, and I will hand over to you to share your experiences with us.
Thanks very much, Robin, for that very kind introduction. I am really excited to be a part of this event today, particularly because my own, CMS's own This Is Me journey began at this very event, albeit it took place in person at Mansion House back in 2017, where I attended as an audience member, and I left totally inspired to go away and create our own film at CMS. So I really hope that we can inspire you today and give you some practical advice on how to go about that. As a bit of background, I've been campaigning for better mental health and awareness at my firm CMS ever since I was a trainee, so quite a long time ago now. My family is deeply affected by mental illness, bipolar disorder in particular. And I lost my mum to suicide when I was 16, and she was just 34 years old. And since then, both my brother and my aunt have also been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And just before Christmas last year, we also lost my uncle, my mum's brother, to suicide. So as you can see, this is something that's really close to my heart and something I'm really passionate about, that's really wanting to kind of remove the stigma that surrounds talking about mental health and mental illness. But although I've been campaigning for so long and talking to people at my firm about mental health for so long, I'd never approached it in any sort of strategic or structured way. The events I organised were always kind of ad hoc, as and when I had time. And so the This Is Me campaign was something of a revelation to me. And as I say, I left that seminar absolutely determined to go away and get CMS involved in this campaign. So the first thing I did when I returned to my desk that morning after that seminar was to request a meeting with our head of diversity and inclusion and our health and wellbeing manager. And of course, they were extremely supportive of the idea, but they suggested that we go straight to the top and speak to our senior partner, Penelope Warren. Now, we're very lucky that Penelope is really passionate about diversity and inclusion. So she saw the value in the This Is Me concept immediately. But she also suggested that we should go further and actually seek approval from our board to go ahead and make this film. Not because she had any doubt that the board would support it, but because she wanted to give confidence to potential participants that this was something that was wholeheartedly supported at the very most senior levels of management of the firm. So once we had board approval, it was time to do the tricky bit, which is finding participants to take part in the film. And over the years of sharing my sort of story and my experience and the campaigning that I've done at CMS, I had a pretty good network of people, a good idea of people who were interested in mental health and who I thought would be interested in this campaign. So I started off by emailing that smaller group together with all of the members of our employee network for disability and wellbeing. And off the back of that, I got a number of responses, a handful. But one important response that came from Kathy Pitt, who is a partner in our corporate team. And that was a really key moment because I knew that having a partner on board, so at the time I should say I was a senior associate, I wasn't a partner yet, and I knew that having a partner on board sharing their own story would really sort of validate and give permission to other people around the business to also have the confidence to share their own story. Kathy's story is incredibly powerful. She tells her experience of depression, which was linked to fertility difficulties and alcohol problems, which are both, very big taboo subjects, which are not really spoken about very much at all in the professions, but which affect a lot of people. So once Kathy was on board, Kathy and I hosted an internal presentation to let people know about what This Is Me was all about, and to share our plan to make a film and to invite others to come forward. And again, Kathy's voice there was really important to encourage others to come forward. And one of the big breakthroughs I had after that presentation was a telephone call from two associates in our Sheffield office who had recently supported each other through close family bereavements. And so they were very keen to participate, and they asked me if there was anything else they could do to help. So I said, could you spread the word in your office and talk to people where you are about this? And that resulted in half of our participants who ended up in the film came from our Sheffield office. And I think that was because the Sheffield office is a much smaller office. It's a very tight-knit community. Our London office is enormous. And I think that kind of close-knit team that they have in Sheffield really helps, again, to let people have the confidence to share their stories and to feel supported by that network. At that stage, what I also did was to put every participant who had come forward into contact with each other. So we had this kind of ongoing email support group where we shared our anxieties about taking part in this campaign, but also our successes. And everyone was really supportive to each other. And if someone was having a bit of a wobble, they would the group would all pile in with support, and that was really brilliant. And in fact, we still kind of have a group email chat now, which is brilliant. So every time we spot a new This Is Me film, or we see another story being shared, we kind of remind ourselves of the group and the good work we've done, which is great. So after that, I conducted one-to-one meetings and telephone calls with each person who had expressed an interest in the film. And each time during those meetings or calls, I shared my own story with the participants. And I asked them to be as open as they felt able to with me about their own experiences. But all the while reassuring them that would remain absolutely confidential until such time as they decided to go ahead. I asked them if there was anything in their story that they were not comfortable sharing on film. And I think it was, really key. I think it would be my absolute top tip, would be to make sure that your participants have that sense of security and ownership over their stories. So I was clear that at any stage, if anybody changed their mind, even the day before we launched our film, if they decided actually they didn't want to take part anymore, we would have just edited out their story. And I think that helped people feel confident. And as people moved through the process, they felt more and more confident as they went along. So I think that would be a top tip. For filming, we used a professional external company, Jano Media, who we know very well. They do CMS's promotional film. So we knew them already, which was very helpful. And the filmmaker himself is a very approachable, personable guy. And that really made a big difference because it instantly put participants at ease. For each of the sort of filmed interviews, there were just the two people in the room, the participant and the filmmaker. And we sort of suggested that participants could bring along a friend or a colleague to help put them at ease if they wanted, but in the event nobody did. And I think, although I had prepared kind of a short summary of each participant's story for the filmmaker so that he could get a sense of, what the story was for each person before they started filming. And I had prepared a number of questions for him to run through. Each of the participants after filming said it felt much more like a relaxed chat, not an interview. And I think that also helped put people at ease. We shot over 2 days. We had 1 day filming in the London office and 1 day in the Sheffield office, and then participants from our Scottish offices and from other regional offices kind of just caught a train to one of those filming sessions in those days. I then watched all of the raw material and I let the filmmaker know which clips I thought were particularly powerful and which parts of the stories I wanted the film to focus in on. And when we got the first edit back, I watched that with our head of diversity and inclusion. And to be honest, the first edit wasn't quite right. It was, it felt a bit too much like a promotional kind of corporate video, not an honest account of mental health experiences. So I'm really glad that I had my head of D&I with me when we first watched that edit, because I think I probably would have, being inexperienced in this world, I would have probably just been a bit polite and said, oh yes, thank you very much, that's great. But she was the one to stand up and say, no, the tone of this isn't quite right, we need to do something about it. And we showed our filmmaker some other example This Is Me films, and the second edit they came back with was spot on. It was absolutely perfect. So I'm really glad that we pushed that point and to make sure we got the right edit. When we had the final edit, we had a launch event in our offices. We didn't kind of quietly post this film on our intranet. We had a whole event around it. So we had a panel discussion, we launched the film, we showed the film, and we had our in-house choir sing the song This Is Me from the film The Greatest Showman, which was incredibly powerful. And so it made the event feel like a real celebration and a real kind of applause to the people who were in the film, who participated. And to this day, people still talk about that event and they still talk about our film. The feedback was that this was a real culture shift for us, and it was, you know, the things that people were saying is that they had never been so proud to work for CMS, and that this was a sign of real and lasting change. And so off the back of that phenomenal internal feedback, and with the support of all of the participants and our board, we decided to launch the film publicly, which we did 6 months later on World Mental Health Day. And again, that was met with really wonderful, wonderful feedback. We did that via the firm's website and their social media channels. So we were in fact planning a second film for this year, which was to touch on the intersectionality of diversity with mental health and the fact that different groups experience mental health and mental illness differently. And it was partly in response to the fact that our first film was not very diverse at all. And there were 11 participants, everyone was white, and there was only one man, 10 of us were women. So we really wanted to kind of step it up a gear with our next film. That was unfortunately due to be shot the first week of lockdown. So it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen, and watch this space, and we'll be pleased to share it with you when it's all done. Thank you.
Emily, Vanessa, thank you so much for sharing so much information in such a concise time. Really interesting to see your journey through that. Really delighted, of course, to hear how the This Is Me model really helped you kind of focus in on what you wanted to achieve in your workplace. And I think really interesting how you know, getting that senior management support really helped with that as well. And also I really liked how you got your regional officers involved from the start as well, to really make it an across an organisation video as well. And I think, you know, testament to the work and the impact that it has, that, you know, within 6 months that change from an internal film to an external film is really sort of testament to what all of this is about. So thank you so much for that, really appreciate it. And you can see a few questions are coming through as well, so do keep them coming, and I can put them to Vanessa and Ian at the end as well. And also Vanessa has kindly given us their video, so we will share that with you all afterwards, and as she says, it's incredibly powerful, so really recommend watching that. I am now delighted to introduce our second speaker. Ian Sadler is a CMR data administrator for AQA. Ian is going to share AQA's experience of putting together their first This Is Me film, but also sort of his experience of being part of that film as well. And AQA also sit on our This Is Me Northwest steering group. So they've been really instrumental in pushing This Is Me out across the Northwest as well. So really grateful for their ongoing support. So thank you so much, Ian, and I will hand over to you now to share your experience and tips with us.
Right, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. I think I've pressed the right button. After 4 months, I'm still learning how to use Zoom. So, yeah, as Robin said, AQA is highly involved in the This Is Me program. So, just to introduce myself, I was diagnosed with bipolar 8 years ago, and I've now learned that I had visible symptoms since I was about 10 years old, so quite a while. I'm one of AQA's mental health first aiders. I've just become chair of the mental health awareness group, and I also took part in AQA's inaugural This Is Me event in 2019. So why did AQA decide to take part in This Is Me? Well, it was part of our overall approach to mental health is the reason we wanted to participate. Now, we felt as a campaign, it normalized mental health issues and helped reduce the stigma around mental health in a relatable and sensitive way. We viewed the previous videos that had been done by Barclays, Price, Waterhouse Cooper, etc., and we found them really impactful and really engaging. So we wanted to do it. So how did we communicate it out to the business? Well, we advertised it on the staff intranet, we displayed posters, and we used our mental health first aiders and wellbeing representatives to spread via word of mouth. And it was also linked in with AQA's overall strategy of making the company, and I quote, a great place to work. And it was also part of the overall wellbeing strategy. Now, in the comms, we explained what the aims of This Is Me were and added links to the Lord Mayor's Appeal website and the previous videos, so people could get an idea of what was involved. And by people, I include myself in this, because it's like, do I want to do this? So, so how did we help the volunteers to craft the stories? So, first of all, we asked the volunteers to read through some terms of reference for becoming involved, you know, what was expected of them. And also included this was an application form with 3 straightforward, simple questions, but even answering these to somebody else took a lot of courage. So the questions were, please can you tell us about your own lived experience of mental health issues, or your experience of caring for someone with mental health issues? Where are you on your journey at present? How would you describe your current mental well-being? And why does it feel important for you to participate in AQA's This Is Me campaign? Now, the next stage, when somebody had put themselves forward, was for them to meet with a member of the planning team to discuss their application and to ensure there were no concerns about their participation. And now, if we felt the volunteer, myself at that point, was in a fit and healthy place, their participation was confirmed, excuse me. Now, vital at all stages of the process was the safeguarding of the participants' mental health. Now, we made it absolutely clear, and it was made absolutely clear to me at the time, that during any point of the whole process from application to filming, if anyone became distressed or the campaign itself began to have a detrimental effect on their mental health, they would speak with either a mental health first aider or a member of the planning team, and it might have been deemed necessary for them to withdraw from the campaign. Now, so they were free to withdraw themselves, or it may have been suggested. And part of this safeguarding was to make sure that they had access to a mental health first aider all the time, and that a mental health first aider was present at every stage, and that included the filming. And they'd have actually been free to have a mental health first aider in the room with them during filming. Now, we provided them with clarity of what was involved. So we said, you know, these are the expectations if you're participating. As I say, this was fully explained to me. There's the time commitment, the fact that there would be an external party filming and not our corporate comms team, that the video would be used internally, externally and potentially as part of other mental health campaigns outside of the This Is Me remit. And they also had to commit to being hopefully present at the launch date and the events surrounding the launch. So all these plans, how did we actually physically film and edit this material? So there's a company in Manchester called Standby Productions who are recommended to us. Obviously, one of our offices is based in Manchester, so that's how they were found. Now, they had previous experience of filming This Is Me videos, which is really important because obviously, as Vanessa said, there is that you might end up taking a corporate approach to a video that's not quite in tune with how you want to convey the message. So we liaise really closely with them with regard to the scripts. So each participant had a prompt script, and Standby were really good at drawing out the material from you. And it just felt like having a conversation with somebody over a coffee. And what we had then was an allocated filming slot for each participant. So the filming was 45 minutes for about a 4-minute edit. We asked participants to get that about 30 minutes beforehand so they could relax. And then afterwards we said, take time for yourself. Don't go back to your desk, just relax, because this will be a draining experience, even though you might not realize it. Now, for this, we had a 2-camera setup. So one directly on them and one at an angle. So they had editing choices. Obviously, again, we had mental health first aiders at hand the entire time people were participating. And during the editing stage, we maintained a constant dialogue with Standby, because again, with Vanessa, I wasn't involved in the editing decisions of the first round. But again, the first edit wasn't quite right. So we said, could you tweak a few bits? Now, again, all of the participants, obviously myself, we saw the first edits of the film, we saw the second edits of the film, we saw the final film way before they were screened. So we filmed 10 videos in total, and 7 of these were used for the This Is Me. And there was also what Standby referred to as a mixtape, or sort of a trailer. Now in 2019, we filmed exclusively in the Manchester office, and a full day of filming with the production expenses was £5,370. Now this time around, we're going to be doing a half day in Manchester and a half day in Guildford, which alleviates travel for participants and also relieves, it just relieves a bit of the anxiety that could be involved, will be involved. So now, obviously, we wanted to support the participants throughout this process. So again, we made sure they were fully supported the whole way through, and we regularly checked in face to face, particularly before the filming, during the editing process, and on the launch day. So obviously, so at any stage, again, the participants were completely free to opt out at any point. So literally until the moment they're sat in the chair for filming, they could sit in that chair and go, no, I don't want to do it. And that's absolutely fine. They're volunteers. We're not going to pressure them into talking about something that's so personal. Then we initially launched on Time to Talk Day in 2019. We had simulcast events in our Manchester, Guildford, Harrogate and London and Bath offices. And when I say simulcast, we all just pressed the laptop button at the same time. So we invited all colleagues to come along and learn about This Is Me, watch the videos and speak with the volunteers. And then we shared the films on our staff intranet afterwards. Now, we've continued to use these videos on an ongoing basis. We've used them during other mental health campaigns. We always get confirmation from each participant that we can use that film again. And as part of the launch, we've also had This Is Me participants on subsequent panels, and answering questions about the videos and their mental health. And we're also now putting a process in place where if somebody who participated subsequently leaves AQA, we will be contacting them to ensure that we can use their material in future. And just to wrap up, important question, how are we adjusting to COVID-19 and filming during that? So our original plan was to launch during Mental Health Awareness Week this year, with filming in early April. Obviously that was kiboshed by COVID-19. Now we had quite a few volunteers up to that point, but we're now up and running again because AQA and Standby both have social distancing guidelines that now enable that filming. And we're now looking to, well, we've actually recommenced production and we're looking to film in September with an eye to releasing on Time to Talk Day next year. Half of the original participants have confirmed they still wish to go forward. Now, an important thing we've decided to do is that although we fully understand that COVID-19 and lockdown will have impacted their mental health, we've asked them to refrain from referring it during filming. And the reason behind this is that we would like to remain true to the existing framework and spirit of This Is Me, where participants and volunteers are asked to focus on their mental health condition or that of someone they care for. So we want material for all time rather than a snapshot of time. And Standby are aware of this and they will guide the conversation and generally help the participants relax during filming. And that's it from me. I shall hand back to Robin.
Great, Ian. Thank you so much for that and sharing your experience with us. I think what came out really clearly for me there was how intentional you were about supporting your employees through the process by being really clear with your approach, what was expected of them, and making sure that they had access to your mental health first aiders throughout the process and also the planning team. And that they were involved at each stage, so each stage of the film and when it's also showed subsequently as well. So thank you very, very much for that. And I'm really delighted now to move to our Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, we've got probably just about 4 to 5 minutes to put some questions to our speakers. So Ian and Vanessa, if you're happy to put your videos on, that would be great. I'm going to kick off with a question whilst you're doing that from Rebecca and Ewan, who both were asking around, obviously both of your films were filmed professionally, but they asked, do we have any advice for people who aren't using a professional film crew? So I just wanted to address that first. Yes, absolutely. It's definitely not a prerequisite. We have lots of organisations who have filmed themselves. They may have used an iPad or they've used an iPhone and put it on a tripod and used to film that way. I think the principles that Ian and Vanessa were saying very much sort of stand at the same, and even if it isn't filmed professionally, the power of the authentic experiences of people is what is most key about it. So that can really come out as well. I think the editing process probably takes a little bit longer if you're doing it yourself. But again, you've heard from both of our speakers that that takes time anyway. And we know organisations who have done that really successfully using sort of iMovie and editing software. And what we'll do just to sort of support that when we send out the follow-up is we'll send a couple of examples of films where they have been filmed sort of using an iPhone or an iPad, so you can see that produces just as great video as well. So that's definitely not, definitely don't see that as a barrier. So let's look at a few more questions we have here that I can put to you, Vanessa and Ian. So we have a question here from Andrew, who says, what have been your experiences of a reasonable timeline to make a series of film? So once participants have agreed, through to rehearsing, filming, editing to the final product. So they're looking for around 5 to 6 stories to launch at the This Is Me Yorkshire launch on October the 23rd. So looking about that sort of time frame, Vanessa and Ian, what did you find from your experiences?
I think that the once you've got your participants, it's finding the participants which is the lengthy bit. So if you've got if you know how you're going to make your film, if you've been in touch with an external filmmaker, or you know that you're going to do self-shot material, and you've got your participants, I think you don't need an enormous amount of time between then. So I think we filmed, we did our filming in late March, I think, and we launched in mid-May. So that was our timeline, but that felt very comfortable, and I think it can be done in a shorter time frame. In my experience, it was finding the participants and gathering everyone together, which was the bit that took the most time.
Yeah, it's when we did the original campaign, say that launched on This Is Me. No, sorry, I get This Is Me Time to Talk Day. It all gets confused in my head. The original release on Time to Talk Day 2019, we filmed end of November 2018. So it was about 6 weeks editing process. But of course, there was that thing called Christmas in between. Yeah, so we filmed, I think it was 23rd November in Manchester, and I saw the first edits mid-December. But it is the recruitment process, because what we do once we go live, we say we have a 2-week application process. We have a week to go through the application. So we think about 6 weeks ahead of filming, we start recruitment.
That's great. Thank you both. So sort of looking at fairly similar kind of timeframes there as well. So hopefully that helped Andrew to give a bit of an idea in terms of what that looks like.
I might just chip in with one other thing, actually. So when our official This Is Me film, Take 2, was put on pause because of lockdown, we decided to make a different type of film, which we called This Is CMS in Lockdown. And it was all about, it wasn't the same as the This Is Me film in that it didn't focus in on mental health, but it was about how we were all experiencing lockdown. That was all done using self-shot material. So obviously, we couldn't put everyone on there filming themselves. And that was done very quickly, because obviously we wanted something to launch during Mental Health Awareness Week. So I think we did that in the space of about a month. So that was very quick. And it was an example of a film which is using self-shot material. So.
Yeah, that's great, Vanessa. Is that externally? Are you happy to share that with us, and we can?
Unfortunately, I can't share that one, because when we asked people to send their stuff, we said, this is purely internal. So
no problem.
Not that one, sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. And just looking at the time, we're going slightly over time now, so I'm just going to look at for some last questions here. So Robert, yes, there are examples of these films. They're on our Lord Mayor's Appeal YouTube channel. You can see a This Is Me playlist there, but like I said, we can share afterwards with you as well. Vanessa, we also had a request if you would be happy to share the questions that you used when you were recruiting your employees. I know you said that might be something you'd be happy to do for us as well.
Absolutely.
Great. And just our last question here is from Laura. So I'll put it out to either one of you. But Laura asks, from a GDPR perspective, if the employee leaves the company, do they give permission for the film to continue being used? Have either of you had any experience with that?
Oddly enough, this arose because obviously we're sharing our films with you, Lord Mayor's Appeal. Mm-hmm. And we suddenly realised that one of the original participants left in March. So we've now, we contacted that person and said, are you happy for us to share that film? And they said, yes, it's fine. But we're now going to, as part of the interview discussion process for the new participants, we're going to say, look, do we have your permission? Yes or no? So we will be implementing that going forward.
Great. So making that part of the process when you're speaking to people as well.
Yes.
Great. Well, I could talk to both of you for a lot longer, as I'm sure could everybody on the call, but as we have run over time slightly, I will say a very big thank you to both of our speakers and to everybody attending today as well. We have a very short feedback poll to share with you now that should be popping up on your screen. There's 6 questions there, and it just really helps us have an idea of how you found the webinar today and what we can do with our webinar series going forward to make sure they're as useful as possible for you. So please do complete that feedback whilst I'm just wrapping up now. So thank you for that. Also, just wanted to say really big thank you again to our speakers, and thank you all to everyone for being here. If you would like more support or to have a further conversation, you can see our contact details on the screen. If you haven't yet registered for This Is Me, that is your first step. That means you have access to more events like this and our toolkit to help and support you as well. You can do that on our website, which is on the screen, and you can also see my contact details there. And to let you know, following on from some of the questions, we are having our next webinar, which will be in September. That is looking exactly as Ewan was asking around how This Is Me can be adapted for small businesses. So we know that for smaller organisations, there are sort of different circumstances and potentially different constraints, but also a world of opportunities as well. So we'll be looking at that in a little bit more detail in September. So we hope that you'll be able to join us then. So just lastly to say, really big thank you to everybody. We appreciate you attending, and we hope that you have a good rest of the afternoon and a good rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon.